mentally feel like Kobe, I'm like Jokic with the rock. You physically couldn't hold me, I don't care if you pushing 40. You can never little bro me. Euro step like Ginobili, from young OG to the OG. From nosebleeds to floor seats, circle stronger than Cuban links. My gold dance, your gold plated. You verse me, now that's a reach. We ready, who ready?
There we go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the One-on-One Sports Show here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network. I'm Mr. Bennett, and I might be solo tonight. I know our guy, Shawnee, he's got a work commitment. I know Dante's having some difficulties. Hopefully, I'm not sure if Coach will join us. So what I may do this a little bit different tonight than what I'm used to normally doing. I may just kind of do like a sports wrap-up, or at least talk about some of the main subjects that I want to sort of cover tonight. And then what I may do is I may just open up the chat or open up the floor to invite guests up. If you want to be part of the conversation and participate tonight, certainly I may decide to open that up. But we have a tight schedule because I know following me, we got Brother Tarus. He's going to be coming up on his channel. So again, I want to be able to respect his time as well. So I think I may do a little bit differently tonight, but we appreciate you guys being with us tonight. So just make sure when you come in, make sure you hit the like button. Certainly appreciate it supports the algorithm here. Also be sure to consider joining the Black Man Unfiltered Network, and certainly anything that you want to give to the channel. Certainly you can either Cash App or Super Chat to the Black Man Unfiltered Network, and anything that you want to give to us personally for those the hosts of the chat. You see our Cash Apps that are scrolling at the bottom of the screen. So again, this is like one of the first times, and I hope I just made an adjustment. So hopefully my audio is a little bit better. You guys can hear me a little bit better through this. But I think I'm just going to do sort of a quick sort of wrap up on what I observed from certainly the past week in sports. And, we'll see where this conversation goes. And then, like I said, I may drop the link. And if guys want to come up and be part of the conversation to talk about some of the events that we've talked about, you're certainly more than welcome to do that. So this is going to be like kind of I've seen this with a lot of sports radio. So this will be my first time actually just kind of my view of the news, so to speak, instead of a panel. But we'll see what happens. And, hopefully you guys will be, certainly part of the conversation. So, I guess I'll just start with the A block, if you will. So I'm just going to share my screen, and we'll just talk about some recent events. So obviously the big thing. I mean, we're still sort of in sports purgatory, so to speak. I mean, we don't have the obviously we don't have the NFL. I know the draft is next month, but certainly we had the WBC, World Baseball Classic, this past week. And it's been very successful. Certainly I've enjoyed this much more than I thought I would. And it's done great numbers. So if you look on the left, the numbers that, the viewership watching those games prior to last week. So you got, certainly U.S. Great Britain, almost 3 million viewers, U.S. Mexico, that drew over 5 million viewers. But the semifinal game with the Dominican Republic drew over 7 million viewers. Certainly it was the most watched sporting event over the weekend. It peaked at actually 8.17 million viewers. And, again, so it was very successful in terms of its in terms of, viewership. There's a lot of electricity. A lot of people say, well, these are, these games are done in this is preseason. I mean, this is sort of spring baseball time. But you saw from the games, you saw from the crowds, didn't matter where you were. You had some surprise teams like Italy, even though a lot of these baseball players do play in the major leagues. So it's not like, this isn't like Team USA basketball in the last Olympics where you got to be worried about the French team or whatever. A lot of these guys, in leagues that play over in Europe or whatnot, a lot of these guys are, certainly play in the NBA. Just like with the NHL, a lot of those players play, but you'd still see this sense of national pride that a lot of these guys really put into the game. And so it's really a lot of excitement. Like I said, Italy was a big surprise this year in terms of them beating the U.S., but then losing in terms of getting into the finals games. But Venezuela, they just seem to be a team on a mission where they were able to have several comeback wins, came back against Japan, and they just seem to be, certainly really determined to win this thing. If a lot of people say, "Oh, well, it's just an exhibition," tell that to them. And certainly, you could say that these guys probably have a lot to play for, just given what's going on, the turmoil in their country. I'm not going to get into the political situation, but certainly there's been a lot of turmoil in Venezuela, both inside and outside the country, for some time. And that has certainly been something that certainly the vibe in Venezuela may not be, it's a lot of uncertainty, but certainly what those players were able to give to their baseball team the other night was certainly I think a big uplift. And that's one of the powers of sports, that sports can certainly, when we're going through things, when we went through the pandemic or whatnot, it was sports. People prioritize putting sports on air because we realize we need these pastimes so to get us through some things when things aren't necessarily going so well. So again, a big uplift and boost for them. Certainly during a difficult time of transition again in their country, and some uncertainty that is going on in their country. So again, over 7 million viewers, peak over 8.1, most FS1's most watched telecast since 2019. Now, the question that people are going to say from now on is, if you're going to get these kind of numbers on FS1, this game should have been on Fox Prime, the Fox, the main Fox channel. What kind of viewership would you got then? And then I also think that you're going to have to, the MLB, which really governs this game, is really going to have some decisions that they're going to make, because you saw certainly the way Team USA was managed. And this wasn't just Team USA, it's like every team was managed, but there were some decisions that were made because a lot of the managers had some handcuffs put on them in terms of who could play, how many innings, like for pitchers, how many innings that a pitcher could pitch. Because again, these guys, their primary job is the MLB. And so they have to get back to their respective teams. Those are the teams that are paying them. And, certainly the MLB sort of reluctantly allowed these guys to play. But having said that, the NHL has similar decisions to make. And you saw what happened with the Olympics and Team USA and Canada at the end. Certainly it's a popular venue, and people want to play in it. That's important. The players want to be a part of it. And so the NHL, they capitulated and allowed their suspend their season for a couple of weeks to allow their players to play for their respective countries. And so people are saying, well, why not MLB? Now, everybody talks about how boring the All-Star game has been over this last few years. So what would happen if instead of an All-Star game, whenever you want to do the WBC in the year that it is, like moving it from the exhibition season, like I said, everyone's still trying to get in shape for the season. But what if baseball took during the WBC time, took a 2-week break off around the All-Star game and staged it then? What kind of fanfare would you be able to get then? And would it be would you get a lot more viewers? Because again, home run derby, I mean, it's almost like home run derby is almost becoming like the NBA dunk contest. I mean, sometimes you don't get a lot of the stars who participate in the festivity, in the home run derbies and whatnot. So they're kind of getting like that too, where guys are participating. But what if you put the WBC on? Because you certainly saw that a lot of people were really enthused about the games, and it just brought out a lot of cultures. The nice thing I also liked about the WBC is that you see how teams express themselves in the sport. Now, I know, especially in the MLB, they talk about there's a lot of unwritten rules about gameplay and about etiquette, things that you don't do. You don't bat flip. You don't do a lot of celebrations or whatnot. Well, you saw certainly with a lot of Latino teams, they are very expressive. The Dominicans, very expressive. They got to move for everything. The Venezuelans, very expressive. So you see that just how people digest their baseball, and they bring their own sort of cultural swag to it, and that was good to see as well. That people express themselves differently. Also, you saw certainly the one thing you definitely saw was again the diversity. Certainly for the teams in the Caribbean and Latin America, a lot of these teams were mostly, if not all, black, coming from the Latin countries. We've known this for a while. I think the Team USA might have had maybe one or maybe two black players on it, but certainly, for persons of color, if you want to use that word, certainly they're in, certainly they're in the Caribbean, and you saw those guys certainly represent. So again, I just think that the venue was really good. But again, congrats to these teams. But a couple other highlights of things that I got from the games. So obviously you had, again, the highest rated game was again USA and Dominican Republic. And there was a very if you're into low scoring baseball, I think certainly one of the disappointments certainly from Team USA, and we'll talk about that, is the lack of offense that they had in the World Series, in the WBC. And but if you're one of those classic baseball fans who likes great pitching, they say great pitching stops great hitting. And if that's what you're into, then you got it in certainly the semifinal game with U.S. and Dominican Republic. Now, the Dominican Republic, they were just crashing everybody. I think they were averaging like 10 runs a game, in the WBC. But certainly they came up across Team USA, and they had their chances. They left a lot of guys on base, and but they couldn't cash in. When you thought they would, and the game ended somewhat controversially with a called strike three by Miller to end the game. And so the first thing that people were saying was, it's like, ABS. I know the MLB is supposed to be instituting the automated ball and strike system next year, but it's like they can't get into baseball soon enough. And then you have your debates as far as you have the classicists to say, hey, well, that's part of the game. Umpires kind of define the strike zone, and they're the ones who are supposed to be calling balls and strikes, and that allows pitchers to be able to paint the plate, so to speak. And so you have your classicists, and then you have people who are saying that no, we need to make sure we get the calls right. And so that was a big, just the way the game ended. Certainly for the Dominican team, that certainly left those guys certainly not happy about it. And even when they implement the ABS next year, it's only going to be for challenges. So and again, I don't know how they're going to work it out. If you win a challenge, you get another challenge. I don't know exactly what the rules are going to be. But certainly you have to, a game like the way that ended, just all the controversy in the game. I think if anything, it's going to expedite the use of it all to get into the game. And some are even opining that you just need to get rid of umps altogether. Keep umps, to guard the lines and all that kind of stuff. But do you really need umpires in the game in 2026? Should we really just go all in on this system? And apparently this thing is so accurate that it can get the call or strike, within like a quarter of an inch or something like that. So it's very accurate system. And they're saying, should we adopt this? But what say you guys? Would you be up for the ABS? And if so, how do you want to implement it? You want it in just for challenges? If you want challenges, what kind of rules would you have? Or are you for just getting rid of umpires altogether, and just just use that system for balls and strikes? So from what I understand, this the way the system works, it's supposed to calculate the strike zone based on the height and size of the player. So it's not just going to be like a one size fits all. But I think a lot of people are fearing that if this is implemented, it's going to advantage the batters, because again, they're going to know that the ball is going to be within a certain area of the plate, and it can lead to more offense. Now, again, depending on your flavor of baseball, do you want more offense or less? I think baseball's done a lot over the last few years to speed up the game. The 30-second pitch counter, certain replay. I think they're trying to certainly introduce that into the game. But with this system, would games be longer because there'd be a lot more offense? Again, we don't know, but certainly that was something that for a lot of people, depending on regardless what side you're on, some people saying, look, they shouldn't have been taking strikes anyway. If a ball is near the strike zone, you need to hit it. And I think for any player to depend on a walk or a ball out of the strike zone, then that's on you. So but again, that a lot of that came from a lot of the Americans. So take that for what you will. But again, your thoughts on ABS? So you can drop those in chat. Are you for it? Are you against it? How you want to use it in the game, or do you think that MLB should finally just break 100 plus years of tradition and just kind of go full ABS? No more, no umpire. At least not there. You can still have a home plate umpire for guys sliding in into home base, whether you need safe or not. Certainly you need an umpire for that. But as far as ball and strikes, just let the ABS system call it. And then the other highlight, so again, congrats to Venezuela, certainly win the game. And again, this was a tough. The emotions were high on both sides here. I think the Team USA took it hard, and obviously again you saw the pride that Venezuela had, and it's just ironic that just the final itself was USA and Venezuela again, given the politics and just what's been going on this past year. It's just ironic to me how it just was. These two teams were in it, and again, Venezuela had to come from behind a few times in order to get into the final. So it was almost like it felt like destiny that they were able to pull this off. But like I said, it does speak to the other part of this was, again, people were talking about some of the managerial decisions made by the American manager, DeRozan. One of the things was when Harper, I guess, hit the home run, the 2-run home run that tied in the eighth. He had Miller, the Padres, to come in, and obviously he was the one who got the last out against the Dominican Republic, but he went with another pitcher. And in the press conference afterwards, he was saying, well, the reason why he did that is because he made a promise to the Padres saying, look, I'm only gonna bring in Miller if it's a safe situation, not if it's a tied situation. And so, that was a stipulation that I guess the Padres had on Miller. And a lot of the decisions that were made were based on what the MLB teams allowed their players to play. And just given the veracity of the game, given the excitement in the game, and obviously the importance of the game, certainly to certain people, that should these managers be allowed to manage the game the way they want to manage the game. You had a catcher, who hits like 60 home runs. Raleigh hit 60 home runs last year, and he barely played in this WBC. And he certainly didn't play in this game. He didn't even come up to pinch hit. Again, saving players. But if it's that important to you to win the game, then do you leave it on the line? I mean, just like with the hockey players in the Olympics. I mean, you had guys getting mouths bloodied and all that. So, should you just let these guys just manage the game? And if a guy's going to blow out an arm or whatever, is it really going to matter if he comes in a safe situation or in a tied situation? Is it really going to matter? Especially if you only keep it to an inning or so. So again, I think that's something that MLB is going to have to examine. So to say, hey, do we really want these teams to, do we really want to grow this event? Because again, it was a very successful event by all accounts. So do you really want to make it, bigger? And then you also have the situation with in 2028, I believe they're trying to bring baseball back to the Olympics. So if they bring it back again, what is MLB going to do in that time? Are they going to allow players to take off that 2-week time period and participate in the Olympic Games? But you can clearly see that this is a very popular attraction, if you want to call it that, if not attraction or like I said, the Olympic events. So again, I think that if you truly want to grow the brand globally and get people really interested in baseball, then MLB is going to have to, make some decisions. And I think that, but I think from what I saw, I think there was a lot of passion on that, much more passion I've seen in any all-star game that I've seen in years. And you saw even with the NBA, they tried to do a similar kind of format, USA versus the world kind of format. And apparently you saw players really putting in and playing harder than what they would normally. And so there's that question, do we really want to have this international format like the Olympics? Like I said, there's Olympic sports that I get into that I would never watch otherwise. Curling, you couldn't pay me to watch curling. But for some reason, because it's the Olympics, I get into it. Ice dancing, I could care less about ice dancing, but I kind of get into it with the Olympics. So I think these kind of international formats, I think people are very prideful about, where they come from and whatnot. And even so with the American players, I mean, sticking out the Team USA, pointing to the flag and whatnot, there's still, even in this global world, there's still a lot of patriotism and a lot of pride from where these people come from that I think that is evident in, like I said, this is an exhibition. This doesn't even count. I don't even know how much money, if there's any kind of extended money prizes, what the compensation is for these guys. But these guys play hard. You saw the Team USA, the defense. You saw Aaron Judge throw at a guy going to third base, threw the ball like 95 miles an hour. It's like the first time he's done that in years. You saw guys laying out for balls in the infield. I mean, guys took this seriously. And so kudos certainly to the players to make it what it was. And then you just saw, again, the atmosphere in the game was such that it made it very exciting to watch. So those are my comments on that. But speaking just on the dovetails of that, you did have Aaron Judge, who in the game, he's the captain of the team. But you saw in the final game, 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. And he really didn't have a lot of action in the prior game with Dominican Republic. And so even though, he started off pretty hot, he's got a couple home runs, certainly early on, 523 on base OPS in defeat. But is this a pattern with Aaron Judge? Now, again, I think no doubt he's probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, even if he never wins a World Series with the Yankees. He's good for 50 home runs a year, MVP in the MVP conversation every year. And outside, if he wasn't injured, we might be talking about him nearing some of these all-time home run records, like, with the 700 club with Barry Bonds and Ruth and Aaron, Hank Aaron, and those kind of guys. I mean, I think the injuries that he had in the last few years may limit him from that. But again, he's like a guaranteed 50 home run a year hitter. And he really puts out in the regular season. But in the postseason, we've seen him struggle. And certainly in games of a critical nature, we've seen him struggle. So we saw him struggle last night. And again, as a diehard Yankee fan, I've had to endure that. If you look at Aaron Judge and his statistics, so, and again, last year he had a decent playoffs, right? So again, in the playoff, the postseason stats, get 7 home runs in the postseason, 415, OPS 1.247, WAR 2.1. But prior to that, and going into that, prior to that playoffs last year, again, he had one of the lowest batting averages, 196 in the postseason. You saw in the World Series the year before with the Dodgers, I mean, he basically disappeared. And so people are asking, I've heard some of the local New York City commentators saying, oh, it's not fair. He's a great player. He contributes in other ways and whatnot, and they wouldn't be where they are without him. But at what point do you start to judge a player based on their ability to produce in the postseason, in the big moments. Like I said, if not the postseason, the WBC, obviously this is an exhibition, but it's still a big moment in the game. And when is he going to produce? And is it fair to judge guys based on that? Again, the guy guaranteed he's going to hit, unless he's injured, guaranteed 50, 60 home runs a year. I mean, the guy is just a huge guy, 6'7". It's like I never would consider a guy that big playing baseball. And again, everything else about the guy, character and all that kind of stuff, no complaints there. I mean, he's apparently he's a good guy. But some of these guys in the commentators will say, "Oh well, because it's just averages. Is the law of averages says that you're not going to get a hit every time. You're going to hit the ball 3 times out of 10." I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, then are we going to take certain terms out of our lexicon, right? We need to take out terms such as money player, you know what I mean, or clutch or Mr. Clutch. Or a guy like Reggie Jackson, who's my favorite player of all time, do we take away his Mr. October nickname? Because, I mean, the guy produced, I mean, the home run World Series I think he's tied all-time home runs in a World Series. So should we take away his Mr. October just to say, oh, well, it's just the law of averages and that's where he's at? But you do seem like you do have these players who come up big in big moments and big spots. Derek Jeter, for example, always played well in the postseason. Never had a slump. They put the same tag on A-Rod until that 2009 World Series where he finally showed up for once. Again, he was a guy who would hit 40, 50 home runs a year. But that 2009 season, he finally had a good postseason that certainly he was able to get that monkey off his back. So again, will Judge be looked at as a great player if he doesn't win a World Series, or at the very least, if he doesn't produce in the biggest of moments? Because even in this prior postseason, even when even though he had a decent postseason, sometimes it's about getting the hit at the time. And like I said, he started off in the WBC fairly hot, but then that fell off. So how do we judge that? How do we judge athletes on their ability to produce in the big moments and seem to shrink? And we talk about this all sports. We talk about James Harden. He'll have the numbers, MVP caliber seasons, but he shrinks in the postseason. Again, is that a fair criticism or not? And if it is, then is he going to have to live with that? I think he's like 32, 33 years old. So I don't know how many prime seasons. I think he still has some very productive seasons left. But again, if he doesn't get it done with the, what's his window of opportunity to get it done, to get back to a World Series and possibly win it? Because right now, I mean, the Dodgers, I thought so many times last year, I thought the Blue Jays had them last year, but the Dodgers are just monsters. And Dave Roberts seems to just call the right play at the right time. So I don't know if you were beating him last year anyway. But that being said, he's going to need, in my view, that moment, not just early in the playoff, first couple rounds, in the World Series, in the big spot, hit the big home runs where your team really needs you to elevate and carry that team. And certainly they could have used his bat in the WBC, certainly in the game last night. They were fortunate that they were able to shut down a very high-scoring Dominican Republic team. And again, the throw that he made, the throw that he made to throw out the one at third was huge in the game. So I'm not saying he didn't play hard. His defense was good, all those things. But again, sometimes you're judged by, Bryce Harper hitting that home run because he was awful up to that point. But he got that big home run, and you can see the relief that he got from it. But Judge was next, and Judge couldn't capitalize on it. So those are things that So what do you guys think? Aaron Judge, fair criticism of him not producing in the big moments. Is that fair or foul? What do you guys think about that? in that block. Moving on to again, we got the brackets out for the tournament. Now, I admit I haven't watched a ton of college basketball probably for the last couple years, just with the one and done and you know just the system being. I did watch the finals last year. I thought it was a very good game last year, but I really didn't follow a lot of college basketball this year. But I mean, again, you got your major teams. I mean, Duke, Michigan, Arizona, and Florida just reminds me of like the late '90s, early 2000s. So the at least if you're into the brands, you know, and especially with the portals and the the compensation these players are getting, you know, they said that a lot of the mid majors would suffer because of this. You weren't going to have a lot of these Cinderellas and whatnot getting into the tournament or having long runs. But it seems like if you're into the old style brand, so again, if you're a fan of Duke or Michigan or what have you, you got your guys, the four teams with the number one seeds. Just to kind of quickly go through the seeds. Again, I won't spend too much time on this because one, I don't have the guys to talk about it, and like I said, I admit I haven't followed a lot of the action this year. But you see here, certainly Duke is in the East region, Arizona is in the Western region. So those two guys will square off, I guess, at some point. Certainly in the division. I think the playing games happen tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. That those games take place. You have your South region. Florida's in the South region, and Michigan is in the Midwest. So again, those guys are gonna get started with there. So again, I may certainly make it a point to try to watch a little bit more this year and see where these teams can see where these teams can go. As far as the last four that got in, so again, there's always the guys who don't get in and those who kind of squeeze in. So again, the last four in: NC State, Texas, SMU, and Miami, who was undefeated actually going into their tournament. Because I was actually going to talk about them last week, but we ran out of time. That they were again 30-0, but even then, people weren't treating them seriously. You see, they're still ranked 64th. And I was just thinking, is it one of those teams like Larry Bird's team was like undefeated back in '79, and they went on the run, but they got to the finals. Was Miami of Ohio one of those teams that can make like a Cinderella run? So again, I'm still interested in seeing what they can do, but certainly compared to other teams that didn't get in. So again, Oklahoma, Auburn, San Diego State, and Indiana. Again, some of those are brand names, but some teams were certainly picked over them. So so Auburn, they could have made a case that we should have been in, certainly over Miami. But again, it's hard to beat 30-0 or 31-1. And so, so they got the nod. But I'll be curious if they did go in 32-0. I would have been very even more interested to see if they could make some sort of Cinderella run. I really would have been interested in that. And so again, I'll look forward to trying to watch some of the games and maybe get rid of a couple of my guys. We can kind of follow a little bit. One thing I know for sure, my Rutgers team, I don't even think they're going to make the NITs, and I think their coaches should be in trouble at this point. I know Rutgers women, they fired their basketball coach, and I think they, even though Steve Peichel brought a lot of rebuilt the basketball program. I think it might be reaching its run. Especially, you had two players from Rutgers who got into the NBA last year, and they couldn't even make it to the NIT last year. So I don't know what's going on with that. It could be the coaching, and so they have to see what they want to do in that situation. As far as on the women's side, again, some of the familiar names that we're used to seeing. So again, South Carolina in Region 4, UConn Region 1, LSU is in Region 2 with the number 2 seed. Texas is back on top again. So again, you got some of the familiar names. No USC, but you certainly have some teams there and some coaches. It seems like with the women's game, again, we're not going to have Reese and the lady who plays for Indiana. We're not going to have that this year. That kind of rivalry of those stars. I don't even know who stars are, but the coaches, especially the LSU coach and obviously Dawn Staley. They always keep it interesting, though. So So you'll be listening in to see what happens, with those, uh, what happens with those guys, and see what they're able to do. But with that, just go to the last block of the night. Again, I expected to have a little combo. So again, this is just my sports commentary. So just to kind of review what we talked about so far. So we talked about the world, the WBC, and the controversies around that as far as the balls and strikes, the ratings were off the hook. Would you want to see more of it if MLB decided to every 4 years suspend the All Star game and just have the WBC be have closed for 2 weeks and let the WBC take place instead of the All Star game? Would you guys want to see that? Versus what the current format is now. We want to see more of it, but again, it was very well received. And but then you also had the struggles of Aaron Judge, whether it be in the World Series or in the WBC. In the big moments, he tends to shrink a little bit. Is that a fair criticism of him? You have the NCAA tournaments coming up, March Madness, and seeing where how those go. And the last block I really wanted to get in tonight was to kind of finish a conversation that we really got into last night. But again, unfortunately, I'm not going to have it. But again, I'll just kind of summarize where we started this conversation. So we were talking about who is going to be, I guess, the next star, if you will, in the NBA. Like who's going to be the brand in the NBA. So we talked a lot about Wemby, because people are contemplating that, again, just given his passion for the game. I mean, he's a freakish player, and he's putting up some pretty big stats. Could he be the face of the NBA? And so again, we started that discussion, and it's difficult. Again, being a foreign-born player, we've had Jokic, we've had Antetokounmpo. We've had different foreign-born players who, again, great players, and whatnot, but will they resonate with an American audience? And the questions were, could Wemby be that guy who could be the face of the NBA? I mean, clearly San Antonio in general seems like they're a very strong team, and they can present some problems for anybody, for OKC or anybody in the in the NBA. They're going to be a problem, as I think Tommy B was talking about last week. So if he wins a championship, could he be the face? And really, the way I defined face was more so about, it's not just the basketball, but it's also the marketing. Is our major brands, consumer brands, going to get behind it? Is McDonald's going to get behind them? Is Nike going to get behind them? Is the major, is Coca-Cola going to get behind them? Because if you look at like Michael Jordan or LeBron or Kobe, you had major brands who got behind those guys. Kobe was on his way to being a really huge superstar if it wasn't for his incident in Colorado. And because of that ended kind of like a lot of his endorsement deals and that sort of thing. But he was still a beloved player, certainly with the Lakers. And he was still certainly, in the context of the NBA, a major star. But as far as the Madison Avenue lane, that closed up. But I think when the NBA or a lot of these leagues or the NFL, when they look for stars, they want everything has to be lined up. They prefer that you're either married or with a significant other. And obviously somebody who can, represent brands and represent the league and not have a lot of scandals. So again, we found out later Jordan, the league, I think, protected Jordan to a large extent. We knew about the gambling and just a lot of the things that he did, but certainly when the NBA and the marketing and whatnot decided that he was going to be the face of the NBA, they covered a lot of stuff. If you watch the documentary on Jordan, The Last Dance, he wasn't necessarily the nicest guy, that he had his foibles just like a lot of other players did, but a lot of stuff was just hidden. But the NBA made a decision that we're going to be all in on Jordan. And he was able to be that guy. And then LeBron comes in. Again, same thing. Again, married early, just like Jordan. Jordan had a wife. Now, again, we knew he was doing his thing. But again, the image, I remember those Hanes commercials he was in. LeBron James, same thing. Married, children. He's kind of got the photogenic family. in a bunch of commercials, and now he's branching into movies. He's opening a school, just all these different types of avenues. Is Wemby going to be able to do that? And if it's not Wemby, then who is it going to be? We already know that certain guys turn that thing down, like they don't want to be the face of the NBA and have that kind of pressure sort of following and surrounding them all the time. But what do you guys think? Who could be the face of the NBA? If it's not Wemby, who would you? If it's not Gilchrist Alexander, SGA, who do you think could do that? Again, a Canadian-born player, but certainly doesn't seem to have any, doesn't have like an accent or something like that. He, comes off as, American or American enough. Could he be the guy to carry the league? So I think the league is looking for that. I mean, Steph and LeBron, they're going to be stepping off the stage sooner rather than later. I don't think these guys will be around for the 2028 Olympics, whether or not they even be selected to play, just given their age, or if they'd even want to play. So who are going to be the stars who are going to replace them against a world team, these international teams that are coming? I mean, we saw last year Steph Curry had to play out of his mind the last 2 games of the Olympics in order to get the gold medal. They just like, here, Steph, you got it. Just do what you do. And, so that was almost like in case of emergency, break the glass, and he was able to deliver. So the world is caught up when it comes to the NBA. What type of team that the USA is going to be able to field in that time is another question. But again, LeBron, Steph, they've been the brands. And it's weird because they've done it in different ways. I mean, when Steph became Steph, because he was in the league for a couple years, but he was always injured. He always had ankle issues and whatnot. But when Steph became Steph, every little kid who was under 6 feet started wearing Steph Curry jerseys because they think, look, I can't dunk it. I don't have the crazy genetics like LeBron, who can dunk it from 15 feet, but I can shoot. And so you had all these little boys thinking that, hey, I can be in the league if I could just shoot the basketball. So I just saw all these kids wearing Steph Curry jerseys. So again, he did it a different way than LeBron did. LeBron with the nickname, the chosen one, coming out and whatnot. Steph was a decent player at Davidson, but nobody expected him to be what he ultimately turned into. And if you guys are hearing stuff in the background, my dog is chewing up something. I don't know what it is. I got to get to him in a minute. So this might be a good segue for me to kind of break up. So I'm looking in the chat. I'm not seeing a lot of activity in the chat, but again, if you guys, I'll just leave it open for a minute. But this is kind of like my sports wrap up, my sports summary, and maybe BME, if you want to, make some shorts out of this, you can. But certainly, I said my crew, they had different things they had to take care of. Hopefully, everything's all right with those guys, and hopefully we can pull this together next week and resume. But certainly, I appreciate you guys for the viewers who decided to come in. Certainly appreciate you guys for being with us tonight. The only thing I would ask is before we leave tonight, make sure you hit the like button. Certainly, in the one out really supports the algorithm. Again, if you want to consider a Cash App or Super Chat to the BMU Network, you can certainly do that. We certainly would appreciate that. And then we'd also say that certainly stay tuned to the Black Men Unfiltered Network, because following me at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our show with Tarus, I guess the liberal or progressive voice within the BMU Network. I always thought I was sort of like the balance kind of guy who leaned left, so to speak. But Tarus, he's a different voice. So you got our guy Arpane, and then you got Tarus. So that's the great thing about the BMU Network. You got all kinds of voices who offer all different types of opinions and views and whatnot. So again, this is not a monolith on this channel, and you can certainly take in their perspectives and whatnot. But again, Tarus is young brother, always willing to speak his mind on current events, and we got a lot of current events that are going on that are certainly on the minds of a lot of people. But on the sports show, we like to just offer an alternative for people to just kind of take their mind off some of that stuff and have some fun and have some debates over what's currently going on in sports. But I think with that, I think I'm going to put a bow on the show to 45-minute mark, which is good for any kind of wrap up or commentary show. You don't need to do 2 hours of that. So I'm going to wind this down. And just as I'm winding down, I'm seeing people coming into the coming into the coming into the show. But again, join us next week. Hopefully, we can get the band back together and present as we usually do. But as usual, I certainly appreciate BMU for giving us the platform to be able to do this. Have a lot of fun in terms of prepping for this and making sure that I like having slides and I like to show things because it helps me stay on point and task as we're doing the show. But I really appreciate this opportunity to do this, and certainly looking forward to more conversation next week. So certainly for myself, Mr. Bennett, but for the guys who are in absence, Coach Ferg, for Shawnee, for Dante. Hope you guys are doing well. And see, Anton, you're gonna come in at the very end, right? You're gonna do this. Hey, Anton, I'm gonna bring. Let me do this then. All right, since I wasn't expecting this, Anton, I'm gonna drop the link in the chat. I'm gonna bring you on for a couple minutes because I'm not sure if you watched any of the WBC, but if you did, or if you want, this is your opportunity. If you want to give literally a 2 minute, I'll give you 2 minutes if you want to do a quick summary of what's going on in the NHL. I'll give you that opportunity if you want to come up and do that. So just drop a yes, put a yes in the chat if you want to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to end the show because, like I said, this has just been my personal sports commentary tonight because, like I said, the guys called out. But if you want to come up for a minute, you can. But you got to let me know within a minute, or otherwise, I'm just gonna wind this puppy down. But I appreciate you coming down. Okay, so the link is in the chat. This is only for Anton. I'm dropping it in the chat, sir, so you can certainly hop on up here, and you can, I'll give you the floor. You can speak for a couple minutes, whatnot. Then we'll close out the show. We'll still keep the show under an hour and give Tarus again plenty of time to get his show together, and he can take it from there. So again, just stay on for the network, but I'll give Anton a minute to get up here, and we'll just try to wind it down in terms of the topics, and I'll just do some quick hits and we'll get out of here. But I just want to give him an opportunity, so hopefully he'll be up here in the next minute or so. So I need some Jeopardy music at this time. if I had some, I would play it. Just wait for him. But Anton, come on, sir, hurry up so I can we can wind this thing down and get on out of here. So hopefully he'll be up here in a minute. While I'm waiting for him, what are you guys' thoughts on the tournament? Have you been watching? Like I said, we've talked about this last year. In fact, we were talking about certainly Caitlin Clark and what was happening with the women's game. It seemed like for a time that the women's game was gaining in popularity. And a lot of people were starting to pay more attention to the women's NCAA tournament versus the men. But now you're almost starting to see this sort of reset where, again, with the changes in the compensation, like, it seems like the big teams, the big majors that we're used to, that they're getting the buzz when it comes to the play. So it seems like the NCAA sort of reset itself for the star teams, the brands teams, like I said, the North Carolinas, the Dukes, the Floridas, and whatnot, that they're kind of back on top again. So again, you're less likely to see a Cinderella team to advance the way they are. So but what say you? Do you have a favorite? Anybody in the chat? Do you have a favorite in terms of who you'd like to see advance in the NCAA tournament? Who you banking on? Have you filled out your bracket? I haven't. Me, I'm usually done by the weekend. I'm usually blown out anyway. So I may just. I'm almost better off. You know how, Anton, you can go to the lottery. You can just say, just generate some numbers for me.
I know what you mean. It's like, for me, I haven't done a bracket 6 UMBC beat Virginia. So
yeah, that was fun. But I'm almost like, you know what? Just somebody just do me a random bracket, and I'll just go with that. Because they just generate pick six. Yeah, just give me some numbers or whatnot. Give me like 10 tickets, random, and I'll walk out.
exactly,
Now my
exactly.
dad was like very superstitious. My dad, he was like, if he saw a car accident, no joke. If he saw a car accident, the first thing he would ask, or we were in the car, the first thing he would ask me, what was the license plate number? And if it was
Oh wow!
three numbers, he would play the pick three with those three numbers.
I knew someone at my job that did the same thing. Always kept a
So,
notepad. Saw 3 random numbers, wrote them down.
yeah.
4 random
So
numbers, wrote them
he was
down.
like he had his own system. It didn't work very well, but he had his own system that it would use. But with the tournament brackets now, you might as well just have somebody just auto generate a bracket for you. And some people do 2 or 3 of them, and just just go with those and see and see who comes on top. But real quick, so again, I was going to wind down the show just before I got on. So tonight's show is mostly just a commentary type of show, just
Okay.
kind of my thoughts on different events that took place. So I'll just do a quick recap, and then I'll give you an opportunity if you want to talk on any one of those topics. And then, like I said, I'll give you 2 minutes
All right.
if you want to give me an NHL update. I'll give you 2 minutes to do that. But we talked about the WBC. I don't know how many games you were able to watch, if you watched
I
at
watched a
all.
few of the games and the highlights
But
and
yeah,
everything
so
else. But
again,
shout out to Venezuela for winning
yeah,
it.
exactly. So you had that angle. You had the ratings. I mean, the Dominican Republic game, I think they peaked at 8 million viewers.
Not
But then
surprised.
but then you had the controversy at the end of the game with the call strike 3 at the end of the game.
That's the
So
ABS
everybody
system
started
that
saying we need
it
the
was.
ABS like
This is
yesterday.
But this is the ABS system that made that call. That was the thing. If you look at the pitch, it definitely would have. From eyesight, it was a ball.
Right.
But the system called it a strike, and this is the first year of this system. Major League Baseball has been talking about this for the last few years to try to get counts as accurate as possible when it comes to balls and strikes, because some umpires have a very wide
Exactly.
strike
Yeah.
zone. Some have a very high strike zone or low or narrow. So pitchers had to adjust.
Right.
So now this was a system that they're starting out this year in spring training, and they also brought it out for the World Baseball Classic.
Right.
As far as I know, they haven't mentioned anything if this is going to be used in the Olympics, because the Olympics in the next 2.5 years are going to be here in the States.
Yeah.
Baseball and softball are coming back to the Olympics.
Right.
So as far as I know, they haven't mentioned if they're going to use this ABS system in the Olympics.
Yeah. I think certainly people were calling for it. Even it's interesting you saying that the ABS they called it a strike, but I know a lot of people were saying we need it now, like to expedite its use in regular games. And then how do you use it? Like if you want to just go all in and say, look, you know what, no more balls and strikes, let's just let the ABS do everything, or just use it on challenges.
I say
How would
just
you
use
want
it
it?
all on challenges, because you still need umpires, and you still need that one umpire who happens to be the crew chief at times behind the plate calling it.
Yeah. So that's going to be something that's going to be talked about. And then the other aspect of the WBC I talked about was the managerial calls. Like the U.S. team was loaded. You had the guy Raleigh.
Right.
Guy hit 60 home runs this year. Didn't really get a chance to play. You had it when Harper hit the home run. You had Miller as reliever to come into the game to kind of do a bunch of. But again, when you listen to DeRozan after the game, he was saying, "Well, look, I promised basically the Padres said, look, I'm not going to overuse him. I'm only going to
And
bring him in a
that's the
safe
problem.
situation."
And that's the
And so
problem,
it's like
because
these guys are kind of handcuffed in terms of, look, and I'm trying to win, but you're saying you're giving me pitch counts and limits, and I can only play a player so much or whatever. And again, I'm sure every manager for every team in the WBC had a similar limitation, but it's like, but just given the popularity of the game, and it's interesting because I also talked about the NHL. The NHL went all in on the Olympics, even though they didn't necessarily want to. But you saw the ratings, you saw the excitement of it or whatnot. And I think that baseball, I think they really have something that can grow even larger. Because this game, it got 8 million viewers, and it wasn't even on the main Fox channel. It was on FS1. And so if they really decide to go all in, would they be better off just saying something like, okay, like like with the with the NHL, give a 2-week break. And if you really want to capitalize on the situation, instead of having it as an exhibition, how about every 4 years instead of an All-Star game?
That would
You have
work.
the WBC over a 2-week period.
That would work. And honestly, I think a lot of players would be for it. You know, a short tournament for national pride. You got the United States, you have Canada, you got Dominican Republic, Cuba, Venezuela, so on and so forth. It could work. It
Yeah.
really could work. And I think what the NHL did, and yeah, I know a lot of people may not like hockey and say all this thing you want, but shout out to Gary Bettman and the Players Association for coming up with this setup with first the Four Nations face off last year, and then allowing the players to go into this year. That was the first time in 12 years.
Yeah.
And now next year, this time next year is the World Cup of Hockey. So they got something that's working already. And honestly, as much as people love to downplay the NHL and hockey and so on and so forth, if you look at what they did last year during the All-Star break with the Four Nations, that it was talked about more than the NBA All-Star game.
Yeah.
And then this year you had the Olympics.
Yeah.
And that did better than the NBA All-Star game.
Yeah, I think it definitely brings out the passions. I mean, we talk about in a, sort of a global world, but people still have national pride. So when Harper hit the home run, he was, tapping the American flag. They'd stick out the USA. I mean, guys, like they want to participate in this. In fact, I think one of the Venezuelan players said this guy won a World Series.
Yeah.
And he was saying that this moment was more important to him than the World Series.
It does. That says something.
And that's the thing that's paying your bills. I don't even know how much these guys got paid.
Yeah, a lot of the thing is, a lot of people don't realize when it comes to these national tournaments, something like this in baseball and basketball and hockey, soccer, whatever, in any team sport, it's a lot of pride.
Yes.
For example, last year, the Four Nations, all those guys were dialed in. Every player for the U.S., Canada, Sweden, and Finland. And some of these guys were teammates on their NHL club. And they were dialed in.
They were ready to throw hands.
It was national pride over club. And then, of course, at the Olympics this year,
oh my gosh,
national pride over club.
Hit it. I just remember that first, I think, with like the first 5 minutes of the first period. And one of you Team USA players laid out a Canadian. I mean, the hits, the hits were harder with those teams.
And I've always told people, when it comes to hockey, for a lot of these guys playing for your national team, whether it's the Stars, where you have that maple leaf, the Stars and Stripes, the Tricoronas, any emblem of your respective country, when you have that on your chest, you take it up a notch.
You do.
Because it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And plain and simple, when you saw that gold medal game between the United States and Canada, and both the men's and the women's game, and shout out to both those teams, and also shout out to the sled hockey team, the U.S. sled hockey team, for winning gold at the Paralympics. So this is the first time ever in the history of the Olympics and the Paralympics that one country has dominated one team sport in the same year. So shout out to
the
those.
WBC a little bit more, because I was like, okay, it's like USA is on this run, but again, I got no spot. And how ironic it is, just given everything that's going on with Venezuela and the United States.
Yeah,
that it was those teams who wound up in the
and I think that's
won
what kicked the knot to a whole new level as well. Because sometimes when you add national pride and the geopolitics and you put it in a sports arena, it really takes it up to a whole new level.
You saw the crowd. I mean, the crowds were. The game was in Miami, so I knew that there would be like a heavy Latin bent anyway, right?
Right. There's a very large,
but it felt like it was like an away game
contingent in Miami.
Exactly. So it just had like an energy to it that everybody was really engaged. Even the American fans that were there, I wouldn't say they weren't. I'm just saying.
Oh no, they were loud too.
2-1.
They were loud too. And the one thing I have to say also at the end, you saw the emotion on both sides. You saw the joy,
definitely,
on Team Venezuela when they won it. You saw the hurt for Team USA. And you know what? Shout out to Bryce Harper because he even walked over and shook hands with a lot of players and gave them love and mutual respect. Like, yo, y'all won this, y'all were good and everything else. I can't take anything away from y'all. Y'all put it out there to respect and everything. And I know it hurt, but game recognizes game, and he was willing to do that. And that's what it's all about. So, So honestly, for Major League Baseball, they really need to look into this to maybe every 3 or 4 years, find a way to put this around All-Star time instead of spring training, because a lot of managers, it wasn't just in the United States, a lot of the team managers,
everybody was being managed, but it's
all
like
hampered by their club managers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't put my guy out there for, if you need him for a save, put him out there for only like no more than 10, 15 pitches. Don't put him out here for, and it's like, come on. Who's managing these teams? Is it the managers for these national teams, or is it their respective major league clubs that's still in spring training? Give me a break. And that's always been the problem with baseball, because let's be honest, the players are fragile. I don't like the fact that it's a pitch count. Guys don't know how to be smart hitters and smart pitchers. They always going for the long ball, so just trying to play small ball. So this is what happens when you focus on too much on the low ball, and you got pitchers only trying to focus on throwing those 102-mile-an-hour fastballs.
Right. But so but having said that, that's what this game was. It was small ball. You saw great defense.
Right.
You saw great pitching.
Right.
And they were throwing. Miller was throwing average like 102. I mean, on the meter.
And I remember watching the highlights when the U.S. played Dominican Republic, when Aaron Judge took out Fernando Tatis at third, when he was running for third base,
97 miles an hour. They said he hadn't thrown it hard.
Every player, every Dominican hitter were like, do not go past second base.
Yeah.
Do not test them.
After he made the put out at third.
Exactly. And you saw the look on Tatis, and he was like, damn, he got me. Judge is running back to the dugout like, yeah, I got him. And Tatis was like, great. Damn, he got me. And then next year, all of a sudden, it looked like every Dominican player was like, okay, you know what? Every hit is going to be no more than a double. We're not going to make it a triple. Do not stretch it into a triple, because Judge will get you. That's the fun aspect. It's the game of anticipation. It's the game within the game between the hitter, the runners, and the position players in the pitcher.
Gotcha.
That's what makes it exciting. And hopefully, if Major League Baseball gets it right, every couple of years, we'll place the All-Star game with this.
Absolutely.
And I think honestly, the NHL gave everyone an idea. As much as people love to slack on the NHL and think they don't get it right, and here's the funny thing people forget. Who was the person that recommended the NHL to bring on Gary Bettman as their first ever commissioner?
I'm not sure.
David Stern.
Oh, okay.
The NBA commissioner. Rutgers guys too, remember? And awesome. He was the one that's told the NHL, this guy will help grow your sport in ways you never thought possible. And no one believed him. And I know there are a lot of purists that still don't like Bettman. They got their reasons, so be it. But he helped grow the game in ways no one thought was possible with the expansion. And not only that, with the World Cup of Hockey and how that worked, first in 96, and then in 2004, and then in 2016, and now they're bringing it back for 2028. The Four Nations face-off, I was a little skeptical. I thought it was a money grab, and I'm glad I was wrong.
Yeah.
And now having this new system where next year they're going to have an All-Star game. But then in 2028, it's going to be the World Cup of Hockey.
Right
around All-Star, All-Star time. So now the NHL got a formula that's going to work. We're going to have an All-Star game still. We're still going to do the traditional thing. But every now and then, we're going to have the World Cup, and we're going to have the Four Nations face-off.
Definitely. Wanted to skip along. I just want to, kind of get some quick highlights, give you the floor for a minute, then get Alex. I do want to respect the time because Terusa's coming up.
All right, no
speaking of again, Team USA, Aaron Judge. Again, now we're in New York, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Judge. He's the first ballot Hall of Famer. If he didn't have those injuries, we may talk about him in the all-time, he'd be in the 700 category across home runs and challenging Bonds, whoever you want to say. If it's Bonds or Aaron or whoever you want to say the home run king is, he'd be in that conversation.
As much as a lot of these purists have to accept it, it's Barry Lamar Bonds. And that's no disrespect to Henry Aaron.
I got you. But I just thought with the, certainly with the way baseball's framing it with, with the steroid era and whatnot, and certainly him not being in the Hall of Fame,
Right.
or if he'll ever get in. That's
honestly, the thing with that, people forget he grew up in the game. He doesn't like the press because his godfather was one of the greatest players to ever play the game, and he took it personal and how they talked about him, especially in his last years when he played with the Mets. He took it very personal.
I get all that, but I'm saying just back to Judge. You got a big spot. 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts. He's one of those guys who's like in the postseason. Now, last year he had a decent postseason, but prior to that, his batting average in the postseason was 196.
Yeah, it's bad.
He did have a decent playoffs up until that time. But again, we define sometimes those great players by great moments. It's not just your overall stats.
Right.
So just like A-Rod had that label on him for a while, couldn't win the big in 2009 against Philly. He had, or that whole playoff run, he had a great playoff run, including the World Series.
Best, I think that was the best run he's ever had as a player.
And he didn't get there. He wasn't there before, and he didn't do it afterwards. But he had his moment.
He took advantage of it. A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, this guy loves everything about the game of baseball. Everything, all the little things, not just the big things. Yeah. And he waited a long time for that moment. And when they got that moment with the Yankees, he took advantage of it and he got that ring.
Exactly.
So honestly,
Aaron, so Judge, we got to say, I mean, so it's, and again, this is an exhibition.
Yeah.
So you don't have but you could still feel the pressure. So is he one of those guys who simply just wilts under the pressure in the big moment? He had an awful World Series the year before.
Yeah, I remember.
So is
that still stings because it was the Dodgers. Is he
going to wear that label? And is it just like, again, until you get it off, is it wearing? And he's not getting any younger.
No, he's not.
And
but
so
he needs some help. He needs some bats to help. He can't do it by himself.
But he doesn't do it at all.
No,
look, if you lose and you go, you bat 450 and you do your thing, no one's going to knock you for that. But again, he just disappears.
Yeah. And I think what it is, he has to win that one World Series. I think once he brings the title back to the Bronx, that's when the pressure is going to be off.
But I think he could have been off this game. Because I think he drove a ball. Was it this game at the Dominican ball? He drove a ball to dead center, and a guy made a great catch. That was the Dominican Republic game.
I think it was the DR game.
The DR. So again, it's like he's close. Like if he would have won the game or certainly led to their winning last night,
right?
I think that would have been a release. So I'm saying, so this isn't for the World Series, which is again that's your paycheck,
right?
This is an exhibition game or an exhibition tournament, and you're still stinking up the joint.
Yeah. Honestly, I think one of the things, he doesn't have that Steinbrenner pressure on him. And that's what it is. I think for a lot of other players that play for the Yankees, they all had one person they had to deal with. George M. Steinbrenner.
True, but that didn't work for everybody, though. It didn't work for Dave Winfield.
It did. And Dave Forgetti and all those other guys.
Yeah, because remember when they brought in Dave Winfield came to the Yankees in '81, you had Reggie and Dave Winfield.
Yeah.
That was that was supposed to be like Murderer's Row.
And
he struggled in the playoff. He struggled he was absent the World Series. He was gone. He did nothing.
You know what it is? You know what it is? And the one thing Steinbrenner always said, there was one particular player I remember he always valued the most. People are surprised. And I give you a hint. It wasn't Derek Jeter.
Well, you love Reggie. I mean.
Yeah, I know that. But I'm talking about with those teams back in the 90s into 2000. There was one player he valued the most, that he really appreciated the most.
Well, look, you had a few of Jim Leyritz.
Yeah, Jim Leyritz. Yeah,
Jim Leyritz. He
was on the '96 team. Yeah, but it was Paul O'Neill
and the '98 team. He was on that team also.
Yeah, it's Paul O'Neill. Paul O'Neill was the type of guy that he got called up, and he was doing everything possible not to get sent back down.
Yeah,
that's the mindset and his mentality. And that's what the kind of player
No,
he was.
I hated O'Neal. I got to admit, I hated it. I mean, look, everybody gets an out, but he would go into the clubhouse. He'd knock the water cooler
I
over.
remember those highlights. Yeah,
I'm like, you're a grown man. I mean, come on.
But that's the kind of player he was.
Come on, man.
Hang on,
man. If that was one of us,
yeah, I know.
That was like he was a spoiled. He was like a brat.
I get what you're saying, but here's the thing: people forgot he was part of that '90 Reds team with Chris Sabo and Barry Larkin.
Yes,
and then that won that World Series.
True.
Everyone was talking about this is a revival of the Big Red Machine. And then when management was looking to make a decision to trade him, I remember Lou Piniella, former Yankee, of course, called them up and say, "Hey, we got a guy here that y'all might like," and that's how Paul O'Neill ended up in the Bronx.
Yeah. No, a very good player, very consistent player, very passionate player, obviously. But I mean, come on, man! It's like every out.
I know.
It was like death. Do a tantrum.
But who also played like that? Pete Rose played like that. Pete Rose is that type of player. I know.
Yeah, Pete Rose, Lou Piniella definitely was like
that.
Lou was just a psycho.
Carlton Fisk with the Red Sox, and I gotta tip my hat off to him.
Now you had some Albert Bell to some extent. Oh, and Eddie Murray was also like that.
Oh,
from
definitely.
The Orioles. Yeah, he was crazy too.
Especially with the Orioles, and I think that's what helped him get into Cooperstown because he got the 2 magic numbers he needed. He got
500 homers.
Yep. Right? And the 3,000 hits.
Yep. Absolutely.
And once he got those 2, you knew he was going to Cooperstown.
Gotcha.
You just knew a guy like him, as reliable, as durable as him, and a lot of other players that came along too that was that durable and reliable, and you never thought about him doing anything wrong. You had to put him in. You had to. So for Aaron Judge, he's gotta win the World Series. I'm sorry, and I know people may think that's ridiculous, but here's the thing: people have to understand: when you wear those pinstripes and you wear that interlocking NY, and you're playing in the Bronx, and you look at some of the greats that ever wear that same uniform, that is the standard.
Yeah,
plain and simple. That is the standard.
Yeah.
And when you've seen everyone from Babe Ruth to Derek Jeter accomplish
the core 4, right?
The core 4.
Yeah.
That core 4. You had Murderers Row 27.
Yeah.
The say hey guys. I think it was 61.
Right.
And then of course
you had 77 Reggie's team, Reggie and Munson, 77, 78.
And then of course that 98 team. That 98 team was
No,
they became the new standard bearer.
Yeah.
Getting the most wins and winning the title. They became that new standard bearer. And it seems like ever since
wins that year.
Ever since that 98 team, it's been hard for a lot of teams that got to get both the most wins and win the World Series. But I
don't think that matters. I mean, it's almost like the NBA with load management. You just want to get into the dance and then kind of play later on. I don't going for those, because it's a long season. I was a bit surprised that they stretched that far. Just win. I think is what most people care about.
The problem with the NBA, in my opinion, they got too many young players. The one and done system, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not. I think they need to get rid of it, and I maybe take a page out of Major League Baseball. You got to do at least 3 years because that gives these players a place to learn to get better. Because the minute you get into the NBA, they expect you to know how to ball. You don't have that learning curve. You don't have that period to grow and get better.
Yeah.
Once you get into the NBA, after you play that one semester, wherever you went to college at, they expect you to know how to ball.
It's kind of funny though, because it got to a point in the NBA where if you played more than 3 years in college, you weren't very good. You know what I'm saying?
But you know what?
Like all those guys coming out like in the 70s and 80s, you played your 4 years or whatever, and you went to the team or whatever. You had your maturity coming in. Then it got to a point where they were taking guys like after 1 or 2 years. And if you played
guys out of high school,
like if you played all 4 years in college, you probably weren't very good. Like Buddy Hield, who I think he plays in Sacramento now.
Yeah,
it's like he's like okay. Like he was a great college. You get that label. You're a great college player, but if you were a true NBA dog, they would have got you after the second year.
But then look at Jalen Brunson. He played what? I think he did 4 years at Villanova.
Yeah.
and got 2
But I
titles
don't. But yeah.
and a
But
degree.
he's kind of like one of those guys you weren't expecting him coming out. I mean, the team was good, but you didn't think he'd be what he became. You know what I mean? Some
Right.
guys just, we didn't even see Jordan playing the way Jordan was going to play when he came out, right?
The thing
He was
was
not. No, he was at North Carolina because you had Worthy. That team was loaded. He had Worthy on that team. You had
Worthy,
Cam
Brad
Perkins,
Doherty, you know.
Brad Doherty. Yeah, so he wasn't that. I mean, he was a very good player, and
Right.
nobody expected Air Jordan though. You know what I mean?
But I
That
think
was
what
just
helped. But I think what helped Jordan before he went to the NBA. People forget he played in that '84 Olympics.
he did, but again, a
And I
lot of
think
guys
that's
did.
and I think
Wayman
what's
Tisdale, the
Patrick
guy played
Ewing,
St.
Chris
John's,
Mullin,
Chris Mullin, yeah.
Chris
But
Mullin.
again, came that mind that draft, Sam Bowie was number 1 that year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see what you see where that went. That's what I'm saying. Like nobody said, yeah, Jordan, yeah, he's good, but they weren't expecting him to like
It's the luck of the
globalize the
luck of the
NBA.
draw sometimes.
Yeah.
It's the luck of the draw. And I think the reason why that's why I'm a big fan, they got to get rid of the one and done, because you want these players to be in a place where they can mature as well. And not just learn to be not just know how to ball, but they need a space where they can learn to grow as well.
Mm.
Have an opportunity to make to have teachable moments, to make a stupid mistake and then learn from it and then keep going. You're not going to have that opportunity playing in the NBA. And I remember an interview, Kevin Garnett did this interview with Kevin McHale. And he said the one thing out loud that a good number of people were afraid of. And he said this: AAU system is what's killing basketball in this country.
I agree with that. I agree.
And he said, Mac, and that's what he called Kevin McHale. He said, Mac, the AAU system is broken. And that's why ball is not what it is. And Garnett is a gatekeeper. And people can say, oh, he's gatekeeper. Yeah, he has every right to gatekeep. He has not just the fact that he has an NBA title and he's in the Hall of Fame. This guy played in the league for as long as he did. He has a right to gatekeep. And he sees it from an angle that a lot of us don't see it. And when he's saying something like this, that's saying something. And now you're starting to hear other players saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's time to look at the AAU system. Maybe it's time to blow it up and build it back up. Maybe it's time to encourage kids to play more than one sport.
Yeah. Save that for let's save that, because again, we're gonna have a couple more weeks of downtime, until the draft or whatever.
Right.
We'll save that in terms of the state of AAU. That'd be a great topic to kick it up with. I want to give you your 5 minutes.
Okay.
NHL, what's going on? What are the main stories? So again, a couple weeks since the Olympics, we're back in play. Who's looking good? Just give it your 5 minute wrap up, and we'll close the show.
All right, no problem. All right, right now the current situation of the NHL is this: they just had the trade deadline a little over 2 weeks ago, and surprisingly, there was no blockbuster trade like last year. Last year was a deadline day move where 2 players, Seth Jones and Brad Marchand, were sent to the Florida Panthers. And when I saw that move happen, I knew that they were going to win the cup that year, and that's what happened. This year, there weren't a lot of moves like that. Some teams did make some significant moves. Some players going back to where they started. I know Nazem Kadri is back in Colorado. No, I think he's back in Colorado after playing in Calgary. A couple of moves were made here and there. Players that I thought that were going to get moved by the Rangers didn't get moved. I'm surprised, like an Adam Fox, and I heard he was going to be on the trade block. Mika Zibanejad as well, especially his performance from the Olympics, so on and so forth. But the only big move that was done was before the Olympics. That was Antti Panarin getting traded from the Rangers to the Los Angeles Kings. And I think one other trade that surprised me after the Olympics was Corey Perry going back to Tampa Bay. So it's like a lot of teams that are in that run for the playoffs are loading up. Some teams that they know that they're out, they're looking to see what are their chances on winning that lottery. Yes, the NHL does have a lottery. So tanking is not going to be one of those things that you see in the NHL. The biggest news right now is Austin Matthews is out for the year with the Toronto Maple Leafs after suffering a knee injury. And unfortunately. And the other big news as well, if I remember, that's going on in the league is the Buffalo Sabres and how they're doing much better than expected. And could this year be the year that they finally break that streak of missing the playoffs, and they haven't made the playoffs, I believe, in 15 years.
Yeah.
So this year could be the year that you will see postseason hockey in the city of Buffalo. So
yeah, it's where I think I was in. I remember, I forget what I was up there for. I was in Buffalo the year I think they made it to I think the Stanley Cup Finals or something like that.
that was in '99.
Yeah. So I remember being up there, and the city was definitely hyped up at the time.
Yeah.
All right, real quick, status. What's the state of the Devils? I know overall they've been playing fairly well. What's the state of the Devils at this point? Are they looking like a contender this year? Are they still figuring some things out?
It's possible that they might get a wild card in, but there's only about 20 plus games left for all the teams. So this is basically going to be the final stretch. So it's all going to determine on who's healthy and any players that that was traded from their old team to the new team, if they're able to gel quick enough in order for these teams to make it to the postseason. You got some teams that that's going to get in. Carolina, I believe, was one. Colorado was making some noise as well. And then, of course, you have my Rangers that are just sticking up the bed. Yeah, I gotta say that LA right now are doing a swan song for their team captain, Anze Kopitar. This is his last season before he goes home to Slovenia with his family. So it's gonna be real interesting to see what teams are which teams are gonna make it and where they're gonna get seeded as well, because the NHL have a different seeding system when it comes to the playoffs compared to the other sports. So right now, I tell people this is the time to sit down and watch some great hockey, especially this last time of the year, because a lot of teams are going to put it all out there to see whether or not they're going to get in, or any team that's already out, they're going to be spoiled to their biggest rival. So that's the best way I can put it.
Appreciate it again, folks. You got bonus coverage, bonus footage. Thanks, Anton, for hopping on and giving us the hockey update and just giving your perspective on the WBC. And again, so hopefully, like I said, next week we'll get the crew back together. Whatnot. You're always welcome, certainly in the space as well. Certainly, but for myself and for Anton, and again for the guys absent tonight. Hopefully, we'll get those guys back together. But appreciate you guys. So for everyone here, take care. God bless, and we will see you next time. Good night.